Hello, everybody. I'm a practicing therapist and a doctoral student of psychology. Today, we're going to go over signs that you can see that females act around an attractive male so that you may recognize if this is happening with you. You are probably attractive to that particular female, if that makes sense. The research that is used is going to be in the description box, but just a quick disclaimer before we jump in. Some of the research is a little bit older. I still like it, but some people prefer more newer and updated research. I have mixed opinions about that. I think sometimes some research that was done a while ago has less bias because there's a lot less, just never mind. We don't need to get into that. But sometimes I like research from all different types. That's just my opinion. I could be wrong. I could change my opinion. But for now, as long as I think the research is good, I don't care. But I do understand some people like more updated. Anyways, the first one is that a female will display nonverbal courtship behaviors. I guess people might call it like flirting signals to some extent in situations where they are likely to encounter somebody that they find attractive. So typically you're going to see this when they're in front of a male that they find attractive. And what are these more nonverbal behaviors? Okay, this includes smiling. It includes laughing. I actually have seen this, and this was actually in the research as well, adjusting clothing or posture. So readjusting themselves continuously. We can kind of see this from two directions, okay? This can be a perception of maybe they are nervous, but another way that they could be actually doing this is the perception that they might want to adjust their clothing, like just for example, like moving things around to make it look nicer or more sitting properly on them to some extent, right? And it's just more that they are more self-aware of their posture and their perspective because they want to look a little bit more presentable around this particular male that they find attractive. Does that make sense? And so that's why I mention it more in a nonverbal courtship type of behavior, because this is somewhere subconsciously or even consciously that they are doing this to attract somebody or give notion or recognition that they feel attracted to this person, to which they are hoping subconsciously this particular person will make some sort of move on them, right? Another common one we see is hair flipping or hair touching. I don't know if you guys have seen that. I've seen it, and some of the research actually shows that as well. So that's really interesting. As I mentioned, this research is a little bit older, but it's in the description box, and I like it. The next one is from that same research, is we actually see that females give males a specific gaze, eye contact, when they are signaling interest. So I'm going to explain what this specific gaze kind of looks like because I thought it was really interesting. Now, this pattern was observed in more natural settings, such as bars or cafeterias. And so remember that context because that's based on what we've seen in the research. This might not be the case if they're in a a less natural setting or maybe in a different setting. Okay, so this was that type of setting. These specific gazes that we're looking at, gaze behaviors, is brief glances followed by a repeated look. So it's like they continuously briefly glance and then eventually it creates a more longer gaze, which indicates attraction. So that makes sense. So it could be like a brief glance followed by repeated looking and then again followed by a longer glance, to which it's held that way. Does that make sense? I thought that pattern was actually really interesting. I didn't know that there was a pattern until I looked at this. This might not be the case with every situation, but that's what this research found. Very, very cool, I thought. The next one is body movements that are typically subconsciously meant to increase physical visibility is the best way to put it. And I'm going to give you examples about that in a little bit, but I'm going to mention why this occurs subconsciously from a psychological perspective. Obviously, I think we can also assume the biological perspective, but I don't study biology, so I'm not going to talk too much on it. But when we look at it from wanting to be more physically visible to a male they find attractive, we can see that part of it is because sometimes it's because you want to remove competition. You want to be more prominent to that particular person. But also what happens is it's a form of signaling this other person that they are in fact attractive so that the male can get the signal, okay, this is my chance to go ahead and pursue this particular person. That's kind of what it comes from a psychological perspective, but that also leans very biological, okay? And so what are these specific examples? leaning forward, right? So if you're in a position where you both are talking or sitting across from one another, you can see that she is leaning more forward. That is common. Male and females do that, but we're just making this about how females act around attractive males. We are seeing the tilting of the head, maybe to try and understand or indicate that she's listening to what you're saying or showing interest, okay? Self-grooming, we talked about a little bit prior, right? Self-grooming can be adjusting of the clothing, touching of hair, but I've also seen sometimes where it's picking certain aspects. So if it's like I'm wearing mascara right now and I don't want to pick it off, but like picking or adjusting, that can kind of be some sort of self-grooming. And then also we see a open body orientation. So shoulders back, open, leaning forward, that type of orientation. Very indicative of an individual, a female, feeling attracted to a particular male and wanting more connection with him, if that makes sense, okay? The next one, this research was done in 2016. Physical touch is a very strong indicator of interest, right? So if a lady is attracted to a man, she may lightly touch his arm, right? Maybe his shoulder, maybe brush his hand during conversations if they're walking side by side, if that makes sense. And a lot of this is not on purpose necessarily, but sometimes you might even see it as a form of flirting, to which she is like, I don't know, tapping or like flirting towards him in a way where she's tapping on him a couple times, or she's touching his shoulder to actually show him I'm interested on purpose, like directly. But of course, a lot of times this is happening subconsciously. Maybe she's laughing at a joke that he said, and so she briefly touches him or something along that. So that's kind of some of the ways that you can see physical touch as a strong indicator. However, we were just talking about laughing, and so I feel like it's really important to bring that up as well. This research, again, is a little older, 1990. We see that ladies actually laugh and smile more around attractive men, especially in response to a social interaction that the male introduced or initiated. So it's evidence that she's saying, okay, your initiation has in fact piqued my interest. So a really common one is if he made a joke, she might laugh, or she may smile or ask any sort of follow-up questions or show more interest if he's talking about something, because she's trying to signal that this is something that she finds very attractive. Now, from an evolutionary standpoint, I'm not going to touch on that too much. I'm not studying biology. It signals some sort of mating functions, right? However, in a psychological perspective, we're seeing social signaling as encouraging the male to in fact continue on these behaviors, right? Because she's giving that positive reinforcement, to which that encourages him to be more attentive to what she feels and what he feels in this social context to build a bond, if that makes sense, okay? This next one is group settings. And I thought this was really interesting. I didn't really ever think about it, but this really cleared it up. This one, the research was done in 2021. So this is a little bit newer. In group settings particularly, we see that ladies actually compete for attention of attractive men by actually increasing their own flirtation. So they're doing it in response to another lady rather than another man, or a man in general, if that makes sense. So she may position herself more closer to that attractive male. She may intensify those visual cues and touches when she feels that there is, in fact, what some people may call a female rival, right? And so you can see that these are how some women behave around attractive men. Not always a case, and of course there are plenty of more research about this. I just wanted to make a quick video. I hope this video was helpful to somebody. Please like, subscribe. I will see you in the next one.